Right, welcome back. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the comments I got from my previous lesson, my first lesson. Got lots of positive comments, also some suggestions, which is great. So I'm going to start looking into those as well. So I'm really happy. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who subscribed as well to the page. This is really early days for me to do this. So hoping to grow this channel and get myself busy doing more and more of these. So if you've got any more content suggestion, go for it. I've got, after today, probably got another couple of lessons on Blackened, and after that I'll be moving on to other things. I do have a few other things in the pipeline, but comments and suggestions are always really welcome. So thank you everyone. Right, so we talked last time that today we're going to look at the verse riff and the chorus riff of Blackened. So let's have a quick look at how the verse riff goes. I'll play it through for you and then I'll break it down. Right, okay. So, what are we doing on this verse riff? If you're going to notice very quickly that we're not in the same time signature as the other day on the main riff. We're going from a section in 7/4 to a section in 6/4. Now, arguably a 6/4 is slightly easier to play because it's an even number, but it still is an odd time signature as such. It's not a standard 4/4 that we used to hear a lot in a lot of songs. Now, the way I would sort of tackle this riff in your head, if you're trying to sort of think about how it goes, it effectively accounts to two bars of 3 played one after the other. So that's why it counts as a 6/4. Now, the good news is the first half of that bar, the first 3 beats, are fairly easy to play. So what we're actually doing is playing an E power chord. So it's an open E, second fret of A, and second fret of D. Now, just a quick side note on that. You can play your power chord in an open E and a second fret of A. I do that sometimes, but for some reason in this particular song, I just feel when I'm hearing the recording that I can feel that James Hetfield is digging in quite deep and getting that tight sound of 3 strings, palm muted 3 strings. So perhaps I would suggest to do it that way, but you can still play it with just one finger on the A string. It's up to you. But I personally feel it will sound better with the A and the D. So what we're doing in the first bar, it's very simple. We're just playing 3 beats in 8th notes of the E power chord. So that's just going to count to 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, now after this, we're going into very familiar territory for us if you've already looked at the main riff analysis we did a few days ago. We're going back into that B flat that we had in the tail of the main riff. So we're playing the B flat, then we're going to be playing the second fret of A, second fret of E, third fret of E, into the second fret of A, still familiar territory, but at this point, we're going to pull off into the first fret of A. Let me show you that. And then we're going to end up on the third fret of E. So we're going to go like this. Okay? And that's basically the bulk of the verse riff. Now let me play this whole verse riff very slowly so you can hear it. Right, now you may have noticed a couple of little things I'm doing. When I'm coming into that power chord, although everything is palm muted, the first chord, the first hit of that E power chord, I am actually leaving it open a little bit and then palm muting. This is something that James Hetfield does quite a lot, which is creating dynamics with his palm muting. If you watch James Hetfield live, you'll notice his hand is constantly bouncing up and down. And that's to create a bit of a dynamics with the palm muting. So I would suggest try to experiment with that. But there is definitely, if you listen to the recording, a little bit of open chord and then going into the palm mute. Right, now the other little thing you've got to be very careful with, this is a little subtle little thing, but when James Hetfield is pulling off from the second fret of A into the first fret of A, he's actually swinging that note a little bit. So what I mean by that is that he's holding that second fret a slightly longer than necessary, and he's making that note swing. So he's going and into the third fret of A. Now E. Now the reason, there could be multiple reasons for that. One could, because if you listen to the demo versions of these songs, we don't really hear that swing. It's a lot straighter. Could be a number of reasons. One, I'd imagine perhaps once he came up with a vocal line for it, he realized that particular note needed to be swung a little bit, or the general riff needed a bit more of a swing. Could also be with the drum pattern developed by Lars on it. It definitely does have a slightly more swing to the much straighter first riff, which is very straight and very militant, really practically. But this riff does have a slightly more open swing to it. So it's probably to accentuate that swing that you need to just hold that second fret a bit longer. Okay. Now then comes if you listen to the song carefully, you've got 4 repeats without vocals of this riff. Then you've got 2 repeats of the vocals with this riff, and then there's a little variation of that riff to follow the vocal melody. And we're going like this. Right, so what's happening here, we're still playing the open E for 3 beats, and then we're going into that B flat, then into the second fret of E, and then into the third fret of E, into the first fret of A, so it goes. And then back into the second fret of E, and then we hit a very quick open E and go into the third fret of E. So it goes like this. Okay, so let me re-explain that, because this is a slightly tricky little part and it took quite a few listens to work this out, that what they were doing. You do have a B flat, then we're going into the second fret of E, back into the third fret of E, then into the first fret of A, then into the second fret of E, and then a quick open E to go into the third fret of E to finish off that part. And this is to accompany the vocal line that finishes in there. Now, if we look at the structure, you get 4 times with no vocals, twice with vocals, and the third one is a variation, back to 2 normal riffs for vocals, and then the third variation once more. So that's the verse. Now, if you're sort of in the initial part of a song, at this point, you'd be going back to the main riff we looked at the other day. Right? Okay, now that's for the verse riff of Blackened. Right, now let's talk about the chorus. So what's happening with the chorus? Once again, just play the chorus and then we'll break it down. Right, okay, so this is the chorus riff of Blackened. Let's have a look at what goes on in here. We're beginning the section with a bar of 2. So we're just putting a little bridge in there as a bar of 2. So we're going, just chugging on the E string, 1 and 2 and. Okay, still palm muted. And then from here, we're heading into an E power chord. So 7th fret of A, 9th fret of D. Then from here, we're going to head into the 5th fret of E, 5th fret of A, and then the 7th fret of D. Now what I see this as is what I call an inverted D power chord. Yeah, it's an inverted D power chord. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to hit the E string twice, and then into the power chord of D. Then we're going to do the same thing, same inverted power chord from the G. So we're going to effectively end up with a C power chord, but inverted. So we're going to hit the E string twice, into the power chord. Then we're going to hit that power chord on its own by itself. Then we're going to go down to the G power chord, which is on the 3rd fret of E, 5th fret of A. And then into the F sharp, which is right next to you on the 2nd fret. So it goes. Okay, now at this point, we're going to go back to the 3rd fret of E power chord, so the G power chord, and we're going to go down, up, down quickly. Yeah, and then we're going to do the same thing on the F sharp. Yeah, and then from here, we're going to hit the E power chord. So that's the first part of the chorus riff. So again, one more time. Okay, right, then we're going to do the second part of the chorus. So instead of going back to the E power chord here to start with, we're going to, because we've already hit that power chord here that we're holding slightly longer, we're going to go back to that inverted D chord. So we're going to strike straight back onto the 5th fret of E, holding a bar chord effectively onto the 5th fret of A, and then your 3rd finger on the 7th fret of D. And we're going to play the E string twice and then land on the power chord of D. Same thing on the G power chord, or the C inverted power chord. Now this time after that we're gonna hit the C twice and then land on the third on the G power chord and then into F sharp. So let me play you that. Okay, and then comes the tail of that riff. Right, so what happens here? We're back onto the G power chord and we're gonna go down, down, up, down. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the F sharp. Actually, sorry, let me apologize for that. We're gonna go down, down, up, up on the G, then an open E, and then we're gonna play the F sharp twice. Then we're gonna repeat that. And then we're gonna finish on the F with 2 hits. So that little tail. And then depending on where you are in this song, you would either go back to the main riff or you'd hit that big E power chord to get you into the middle section of the song. Now that pretty much concludes today's lesson. So let me just play you one more time at least the chorus so you get to hear the whole thing. Here you go. Now, one little note, very often when I do power chords that are right next to each other, you might have noticed what I did there. Instead of going back with my first finger, I will often play my power chord using my second and pinky. So I'm going to go. Do you see that? I would very often do that, and that's the main reason for that is when you're recording things and you've got power chords close to each other, you want to avoid hearing too much of the strings going in. So that's one way to avoid that, and I will actually do another lesson on explaining how to do that and how to practice this. Dave Mustaine is a big master of doing chords like that and to keep the recordings very, very clean on his power chords. That concludes today's lesson. I'll hopefully come back before the end of the week on the middle section of Blackened. Till then, thanks for the support and stay metal.